Welcome home. We are WNST. Taos, Baltimore. Baltimore Positive. We are positively in Ocean City, Maryland. I just like singing the song. Maybe let me be a spokesperson one day for OCMD. Gold Rush 7s doublers are here from the Maryland Lottery. Be giving these away on next Friday at Fadley's in downtown Baltimore. Beautiful new Lexington Market. Our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, putting Luke out on the road for Orioles and Ravens and me on the road to Ocean City so that I can meet with people in Ocean City, Maryland, who are from Montgomery County that have never been down to Rockville or any of these places and hung out. We've had him on before. He's a defending champion, Marc Elrich, the county executive, Mr. CE. We welcome you back. How are you?
I'm fine. I want you to tell me what's new in Lexington Market, because I used to love going up there.
What's new is everything. They're going to raise the old one. They built a completely new structure about 100 yards to the south, a little closer to Camden Yards. New facility, new structure, 2 levels down to Lexington, up on Topeka. All new stands, all new things. Fadley's was the last one to get in on the south corner, that they got the kitchen right and all that, and food's better than it's ever been over 200 years.
So did a lot of the old vendors manage to make the transition?
Some did, some didn't, and you can imagine that there's, political. Park Chicken got a storefront across the street. So they moved out of the market to a storefront right across the street.
Wow.
And now the whole street smells like Park Chicken, which is pretty good. I mean, nothing wrong. I'm a Royal Farms guy, as you know. How are you? How's your county doing?
My county's doing fine. We're doing pretty good.
When you come down here to Mako and you see 22 others like you, not everybody has a county executive, some have commissioners. Same challenges, crime, potholes, lights. We're not getting enough from Annapolis. They're getting too much in Baltimore. They're not getting enough on the shore. Is it the same sort of issues?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's, for example, everybody's struggling with what they're going to do with the schools and the impact of the blueprint. That crosses everybody's boundaries.
Well, you're a lifer educator, so what are we going to talk? We can talk about Kerwin for 10 minutes. I'd love to do that.
Anything you want. We deal with that. We deal with when the state ran out of money, every jurisdiction realized nobody can do a construction project unless it has state money. So unlike Virginia, none of the Maryland counties are allowed to have taxes that raise money on commercial property to build infrastructure. Virginia does this all the time. Their taxes, and if you're in Tyson's Corner rather than Montgomery County, your taxes are 50% higher than Montgomery County taxes for real estate.
Well, the same thing would be said here for Ocean City for Fenwick, right? Like these bordering states on any of these issues, whether it's cannabis, anything you can bring across the state line tax-wise, people will take advantage of that, right?
Yes, they will. So we're trying to do more. We're trying to convince the legislature, but this is something that all the counties agreed to, because when they realized that without state money they were doing nothing, and all of them got things that need to be fixed, and they have economic development implications, waiting for the state to solve every problem is not the way to run the government.
Well, so how do you do that then?
So Virginia has set up special taxing districts. They lie primarily on commercial property. They raise money they do bonds for 20 to 30 years so you're paying a small amount every year, as opposed to all the counties like us. We have impact taxes. You can do them on the front end. They become part of the developer's capital stack. If you're developing in Virginia where they don't have these, that's not part of what they have to raise at the beginning of a project. So it's more expensive to raise money in Montgomery County than it is to raise money in Virginia. You have to raise more in Montgomery County. And that has a negative impact on development. If we did what Virginia did, where you take the money off the back end for 20 years while you pay for your bonds, the impact on everybody's much less. It's a common sense way to do it, but there's a feeling in the legislature that the legislature should control the revenues. And I would be fine with that if the legislature had the ability to meet the needs that we have. But if they can't meet the needs, they should let the counties who are willing to step up, let us step up to meet the needs, because we know best. It's easier for us to convince people that we need to tax our taxpayers than it is for the state to convince people who aren't in Montgomery County to tax for projects in Montgomery County. It just simplifies things for everybody, and it would be good for all the jurisdictions to have some degree of independence. It doesn't mean you don't need the state, but it means that you have the flexibility to raise money locally, which the state can't do unless they get everybody. And that's what people worry about at the state level. I'm trying to alleviate their need to get everything from everybody.
For you as a teacher, when you see this Kerwin and money and what to do with it and how's it going to be, I'm sure you've been out of teaching a little bit, but challenges you had probably similar, maybe even more, given the digital divide and like where we are with how kids are learning today with all these devices and whatnot. What's important to you as an educator from a family of educators, as I do a little bit of research on you, that would make your children's school better at some point?
Well, I think there are a couple of things they've got to do. I think they got to get the cell phones out of the schools. Period. They're being used in the middle of class. I've been in classrooms where kids were sitting there on the phone instead of paying any attention to anything, and that's just ridiculous.
Not an aid, a distraction.
It's a distraction. It's not used properly in the schools. It's used to set up all the wrong things that it sets up during the school day sometimes, and it's a bullying device. And so you get kids, you look at their phone and they see that somebody said something bad about them, and in social media. It is just disruptive, and it contributes nothing to the classroom. And if parents want to call a kid, for years, all you did is you called the office, and they said, I need to talk to my son. And the office would go on the intercom to the classroom and say, so-and-so's parent.
You don't need to be tethered to your child 8 hours when they're at school.
Apparently people feel they need to be, but.
I turned that all right without my mother being tethered to me. I turned that half all right, Mark.
Look, come on, every once in a while, a parent needs to tell you, like, I'm not going to be there at such a time. I want you to go to so-and-so's house after school instead of coming home. I get that, but they don't need to have the phone on during the day. And if it's an emergency, if you call the office, they can get the kid down to the office to take the phone call. So there are ways that kids and parents can stay in communication without turning the classroom into this massive destruction factory.
I'm an old school guy. My elementary school, I was telling Johnny, he knows. We rededicated. We 100 years old. We're celebrating our 100th anniversary of my elementary school this week. Raised it, brought it back up. But I remember the little intercom would be on.
Oh, yeah.
Please send Nestor Aparicio with his book bag back to the office. His parents are here to pick him up.
Yes.
And I'm like, who died? Are we okay? Or was my dad taking me to the Oriole game? It could be anything. But that's how I communicated with my mother.
Good.
My mother would be on the intercom, come home, like that.
And it worked.
It did work.
And so now instead we let them play games, we let them get distracted, we let them insult each other, we let them do
I did
all
play
this
the little football game where we folded the paper up and we kicked the field goals.
Yeah.
Come on,
But you can't do that in a classroom. You can do it at lunch across the table. You don't have
only when we had a substitute teacher that wasn't up to your chops, Mark, is what it is. Marc Elrich is here. He is the Montgomery County executive. For Schooling and Free, what do you know about education that, as a county executive, really will help you and help the county for Kerwin?
Well, first thing I'd say is I think the most important thing of all the things people talk about doing is early childhood education, because all the problems that start in schools start because so many of the kids enter kindergarten 2 years behind. This is a scary thing. This is in Montgomery County. They would tell us that, this huge portion of our student body is 2 years behind when they're entering kindergarten. When you're 2 years behind and you're 4 or 5 years old, you're functioning like a 2 or 3 year old. You're not ready to be in a classroom if that's where you're functioning. If the kids had been in early childhood education, if they'd had the opportunity to socialize with other children, if they gotten the sort of basics that you used to get taught if parents are home all day, which is not home all day, but the kind of things like that's a square, that's a circle, that's this color.
The letter A, the letter B, the number
stuff.
1, the number 2,
and
right?
it's all done organically without treating them like, sit down in that chair and learn this right now. The idea is not to turn it into school, but to create a learning environment where the kids learn naturally. And where you've got early childhood education, the kids who get into it, particularly if you start at 2 years old, you wind up with real effects that are long-lasting. And
so you want to see more resources into that?
I want it
pre-K.
If I was going to put money in any place, I'd start at the beginning, and because I know that as those students work through the system, they're not going to create the kind of expensive problems that we have now.
Well, 10 years from now, if you take a 5-year-old and project that out as a 15-year-old, you're making the world. If you could fix all 5-year-olds now,
Yep.
be a pretty good place in my retirement, this country, this world,
yes.
Right? Literally, right?
They would be more ready. They'd be more ready to learn, which is the important thing. And the other thing, that I came to realize as a teacher, that a lot of kids don't try. And they don't try because they don't want to be seen as failures. And so the antidote to being a failure is painful. So the best protection against embarrassment is say, well, I don't care. I'm not even trying to do that. And that leads them, they're too young to make that kind of decision that this isn't something I'm going to try to do. So getting them in a place when they step into a room that they're in a relatively same place with English, relatively same place with numeracy with other kids, makes it a lot easier for them to learn. They can fully participate. They don't sit back and say, what the hell's going on? Why don't they know any of this stuff? It does all kinds of psychological damage. We know how to fix it. We need to bite the bullet and fix it. And it would, over time, it would alleviate all the intensity that we're seeing right now in our school system down the road.
I've never met Angela Alsterbrooks. I had you on. I'm going to have her on next month, September 24th, on the Oyster Tour before the election. I'm going to ask a flippant Baltimore question here, right? Because I'm not a Commander fan, certainly wasn't a Dan Snyder fan or Jack Kent Cooke fan. How did the stadiums wind up in PG County or Prince George County to begin with? And I never hear Montgomery County about to bend over and build Ted Leontis at this, or you're shaking your head, Reed, so much
Nope.
that and I never have to ask Johnny O if the Orioles are going to, build something at Owings Mills or the Ravens are going to move out of downtown. But those Washington franchises, I mean, what Leontis did to Virginia, D.C., the district that I've just witnessed, the new guy that's come in that bought the Orioles, where Bisciotti bought the team, runs out, $1.2 billion so they can build a club in the middle of the press box, move the press box to the roof and throw me out. I'm a sports guy, dude. My last name's Aparicio. I built this thing on sports. When I start to talk about real problems with real people and serious people, I wonder what municipality, what guy like you, dressed like you, is going to give them $1.2 billion.
I would never do it.
It's an amazing thing, but how does it? And I know you would never do it, right? I mean, it's your accountant that shows me that. But tell me about sports and industry, and when Dan Snyder comes knocking on your door and says, build me something in Gaithersburg or whatever.
There
right?
are academic papers that have been written for a long time indicating that basically sports stadiums are losers for jurisdictions. You get low-wage jobs. You don't get a lot of jobs. The jobs are sporadic. They're totally dead-end jobs for the most part. You endure an enormous expense, the police protection and everything else you wind up doing, and you're giving them all this money, and these guys are rich enough to build their own stuff. It's not like you got low-income people coming in and say, build me a stadium. You've got billionaires demanding that you build them a stadium, and this is just absurd. We've gotten to this, the problem is a place, like you guys got teams, Montgomery County never had team. Everybody feels like, well, if somebody leaves, it's a loss of prestige, and something's wrong with us. And so when the original Colts disappeared to Indianapolis,
I'm all about that. I was working at the paper when it happened. I mean, I spent the first 6 years on these airwaves begging to get a team, give Baltimore the ball, and then I sat here for 2 years and said, give them your poor suckers license money, so that 30 years later some snot-nosed executive treats me and my wife like garbage and throws me out and says I'm not a media member anymore, while my Caucasian employee is accessed every day to the facility so he can cover the team so that they can blackball me. It's an amazing thing, Mark, what's going on here. I've only written 2 books about the Ravens. That's all.
Look, so you guys got caught up in this "why did we lose it" scenario. Same thing. DC's terrified. Now Prince George is terrified of losing the team to Virginia. I wouldn't be surprised. If they wind up in DC at some point.
But if I sat with Angela Alsterbrooks right now, or you, if it was in your county and you inherited it, you say, all right, what do you lose by losing FedEx Stadium, whatever they're calling it this week? 2 Beyonce concerts, 5 football games where people would come, 3 where nobody comes, and I'm wondering, what is the economic impact of that facility? The Capitol Center had more economic impact. I went there a lot.
Yes, well, if they left this, they have to leave the stadium behind. They don't take the stadium with them. You can turn it into an entertainment venue. For much of the year, it would actually work as an entertainment venue. You could maybe build in the middle of it,
you can still get Beyonce if you want to.
You could still get Beyonce if you want her. So you could probably find creative things to do with the stadium, either way. And I wouldn't,
But you don't have one of those in Montgomery County.
I don't have one of those. But if I was asked, would you be willing to? Because I was asked. My answer was, I'm not interested. I don't see the point. The numbers don't support putting public money into stadiums.
Marc Marc Elrich is our guest. I'm sorry we lost video. I must have hit the button here or something like that. It's all brought to you by the Maryland. I got to get rid of you soon, but I want to have an oyster with you, have a crab cake with you, and talk more about sports and money and crab cakes and your county. What is the economic driver of your county?
Well,
I don't know enough about Montgomery County.
So we're still largely a bedroom community of federal government. So a lot of people work downtown. Then you've got major labs like NIH, FDA. So we have some of the largest federal facilities that employ a lot of people. Then you get the school system, which employs 25,000 people. Less of an economic driver, but certainly a lot of employment in the county. We've got some large hospitals. We've got some large companies, but our collective, I won't say bread and butter, but the thing that is our strongest suite in the private sector is actually the development of life sciences. So we're the number 3 life sciences center in the country, and nobody knows it.
Now I do.
Which is something we've been trying to fix. We just got the University of Maryland to bring its first graduate level research program over to Montgomery County. Here we are next to the University of Maryland forever, historically.
How close is the border of your county to the campus? Half a mile?
Oh, the border is the border.
The border is College Park.
Well, College Park is maybe a mile farther than that. But you cross the border, you're in Prince George's County. So they had never done it. They never opened up anything in Montgomery County. They have a project with universities of Shady Grove for the University of Maryland system. The different colleges will set up programs there, but it's not a true university where the university itself determines what programs it wants to run and what kind of college it wants to be. They're very dependent on the system. So I'm optimistic that with life sciences, we're going to do really well. We just signed an agreement with WMATA to solicit a developer for a joint development agreement to develop the WMATA site, that's Metro, a train, in what's now Pike and Road. No, it's now called North Bethesda. It used to be White Flint. So they're going to develop that area around there, 14 acres. And
that's a White Flint Mall?
Focused on, that's down from it.
Okay.
But the goal is over there to first do the property around WMATA, start bringing in life sciences companies, and then get the mall and the other property owners who are already changing their projects from non-life sciences to life sciences to fill up both sides of Wisconsin Avenue with life sciences projects and make that the life science center.
That's a job incubator there,
It's a job incubator, high-end jobs, good quality work, lots of national prestige. The better we are, the more companies we attract here. We've been going overseas, we've been to Korea, Taiwan, China, Vietnam, India, talking to people about bringing companies over here. We've had some success bringing smaller companies over here. So
they want to be near D.C.
They want to be near NIH, and they want to be near FDA. If you're anywhere in the world and you want into the U.S. market, the door is in the FDA. The FDA door is in Montgomery County. You've got lots of tech support here that's used to dealing with FDA. You can help companies go through that gauntlet. And so it's been really appealing.
Get you legal, like literally get you legal. Yeah, okay.
Or get you approved for selling drugs in the United States, and so it's a big deal. And this is something we've really been capitalizing and pushing on. We started out as a bedroom community, totally dependent on the federal government. That proved not to be wise. And nobody planned it that way, but that's the way it evolved.
People came and left, right?
So now you've got to realize the feds aren't likely to continue to expand, more likely to contract. Terrible chance of Trump's elected that things will be sent out to red states. So you could collapse the job base here, depending on how much damage he chooses to do.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
So we need to have multiple plans. So we've been focused on life sciences, light manufacturing. We're trying to bring things into the county we haven't had before, but we want to make sure that we can, continue to grow the economy, whether or not the federal government expands or contracts.
Good visit with you.
We're not going to wait till we find out what the bad news we're going to.
Well, all right, I got you. You got 60 days here, about 75 days for the election. Marc Elrich is the good county executive from Montgomery County, where I tend to drive through. Sometimes I stop at Strathmore. Sometimes I stop in Potomac and get a sandwich or something. But I'm usually going to Wolf Trap or I'm going to Jiffy Lube Live. So I come through. I'll stop a little more often, all right?
Hey, you should check out Strathmore shows. I saw Nils Lofgren there.
The great Nils Lofgren of Montgomery County.
And I saw an amazing Pink Floyd concert there. It wasn't Pink Floyd, but it was one of the cover.
It was
Australian
several
cover
species or the Australian.
Yes,
Floyd. Okay.
the Australian guys. So they're amazing. I saw John Prine there when he was still alive. They're just amazing artists to go through that space. And it may be one of the best listening halls, the way it was designed.
Everything sounds great in Strathmore. There's no doubt about it. My dear friend Alan McCallum, who was my longtime ballpark reporter, ran Strathmore for years. He's at the Kennedy Center now, but he was at Strathmore for many years, would always invite us in. Good times at Strathmore. Get down to Montgomery County. We are here in Mako. Everybody should come down to Ocean City and enjoy the beach. My wife has been out on the beach this morning. We got things going on down here, including Senators Ben Cardin, Chris Van Hollen visiting with us. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. Back for more Baltimore Positive right after this.